hear you now.
Okay. Our theme is taken from the International Women's Day that was celebrated on the 8th March 2020, as Pamela has explained. May I quote some extracts from that day, which puts what we're going to look at in perspective. It says, an equal world is an enabled world. How will you help forge a gender equal world? Gender-based violence is a phenomenon deeply rooted in gender inequality and continues to be one of the most notable human rights violations within all societies. Gender-based violence is violence directed against a person because of their gender. Both women and men experience gender-based violence, but the majority of victims are women and girls. Many forms of violence against women are rooted in power inequalities between women and men, unquote. So, gender violence has prevailed for as long as men has existed and continues to this day. I believe that it's time we all come together and forge an equal world, like we say. Our sermon is based on a familiar story. So we look in the Bible. Today we look at a familiar story in the Bible about Abram, who was later called Abraham. Our text will be from Genesis chapter 16, 17, 18. Then we will skip to 21 and read the first 21 verses. We will have a long read, so let's be ready. We know Abraham as a man of great faith and a friend of God. Due to time constraints, I will not. Oh, I'm very sorry, technology is doing something else. Oh, I'm sorry, Bazalon. Due to time constraints, I will not talk much about then I won't read, but I will try and paraphrase. Okay, now in Genesis chapter 12, we found Abram deceiving Pharaoh out of fear that he might be killed, and called Sarai his sister. At that point, he received great gifts from Pharaoh, livestock, and slaves. Remember then that these people called slaves are regarded as part of things or wealth. So among the slaves was Hagar. In Genesis 16, Hagar becomes an important component in Abram and Sarai's desperate need for a child. Sarai proposes a child for Abraham through Hagar, as it was a socially acceptable practice at that time. So we read chapter 16, verse 1 and 2. Now Sarai, Abraham's wife, had borne him no children, and she had an Egyptian maidservant whose name was Hagar. So Sarai said to Abraham, "See now, the Lord has restrained me from bearing children. Please go to my maid, perhaps I shall obtain children by her." And Abraham heeded the voice of Sarai. Many years before this, God promised Abram that he would have many descendants. To this point, he had no children through his wife Sarai. Let us note that God promised Abram that he will be a father of many nations. And he, Abram, believed God to the point that at God's command, he left his country to a foreign land that was promised. How is it now that when his wife brings an alternative plan, he doesn't question or remind his wife about the promise? Instead, he happily agrees. The Bible clearly states in Genesis 16:2b, Abram agreed to what Sarai said. Other translations says he heeded the call. He was in agreement. Let's note that gender-based violence. Let's note this gender-based violence from the old man after God's own heart. He agrees to molest a young, powerless girl. How many women suffer today in the hands of incest and are not protected because Sarai is concerned about her needs and Abraham is quiet? Most women are silenced and continue to suffer because uncle is a breadwinner. He is the one that gives us food. So we are quiet when uncle abuses the young girls in our families. Or it's mommy's boyfriend that she's not willing to lose. So young girls are sacrificed. What about Prophet Otomose, who was aided by women to abuse young women in the church? Equality will be achieved when both men and women come to the party. Let's go on to the story. So the slave conceives. What an honor to carry the master's child, who the mistress could not for so many years in marriage. So Sarah is despised by Hagar. In Genesis 16, verse 5, Sarah throws the ball back to Abraham in anger. You are responsible for the wrong I am suffering. I put my slave in your arms, and now that she knows that she is pregnant, she despises me. May the Lord judge between you and me. How? Exactly. The young girl is excited in the loving arms. Who wouldn't? She has received the love she has never known in her whole life. Hagar has everything Sarai ever wanted, and far as everyone knows, she is carrying the promised baby, Abraham's heir. So pride takes its course. Again, let's note that without proper guidance, our women, especially young women, get fooled by false love and fall in the wrong hands. It continues. Do with her whatever you think best. That was the answer from the father to be. No protection, no protection. Just do as you wish, says Abram. Let us note, dear men, that by being quiet, are you aware that you are an enabler of gender-based violence? Yes, you are a good Christian man, but what do you do when violence is perpetrated under your watch? Sarah's sin of commission was so harsh, and Abram's sin of omission so cruel, that it forces a pregnant young woman to flee to the wilderness. In chapter 16, verse 6, an angel of God calls Hagar by name and asks, "Where have you come from and where are you going?" Hagar answers truthfully, "I am running away from my mistress, Sarai." The angel commands her to return and submit. This is not the advice she had expected. The treatment was harsh and horrible. Surely she doesn't want to subject herself to the abuse and inhuman treatment she had received. I think at that point, Hagar might have said, "Dear angel, don't you understand? I understand. This angel sounded exactly like some advices often given to abused women by other women, especially older women. Kuyabekezelwa emendweni mntanami, kuyabekezelwa sisi, buyela khona. Or, monna ke slepe, don't worry, at least he married you. Those are the advices that people get when they're abused. Isn't it time for us to give wise counsel to those who are abused and be more sensitive to their cry? So, as the story continues, the angel reverses Hagar's flight. We thank God it was an angel. Hagar might have cried to the Lord in the wilderness, so the angel did not send her back empty-handed, but gave her assurance of God's presence in her dilemma. God called Hagar by name. She hears her name in a personal address. She is not a slave, she is Hagar. How true of Psalm 46 verse 1, that God is our refuge and strength and ever-present help in trouble. Therefore, we shall not fear. The angel added, I will increase your descendants so much that they will be too numerous to count. The angel of the Lord also said to her, you are pregnant, and you will give birth to a son. You shall call him Ishmael, for the Lord has heard of your misery. God spoke directly to Hagar. She gets a one-to-one attention that Abraham has gotten when God called him to leave his country and promised him to be the father of many nations when he spoke to him in Genesis 15 verse 13. Hagar responds in verse 13b and says, you are El Roi. You are the God who sees me. I have now seen the one who sees me. El Roi, you are God who sees me. I have now seen the one who sees me. Every blow Sarai inflicted and every blind eye Abraham turned, every injustice Hagar suffered, God of the universe and the God of Abraham saw it all. David said in Psalm 72 verse 12 to 14, he will deliver the needy who cry out. The afflicted have no help. He take pity on the weak and needy and save the needy from death. He will rescue them from oppression and violence, for precious is their blood in his sight. Precious is their blood in his sight. His eye is on the sparrow, and I know he watches over me. So Hagar goes back, and indeed her son is born, and Abram calls him Ishmael. Ishmael is born. The story continues in Genesis 18. The Lord appeared again to Abram. His name is changed to Abraham, and Sarai to Sarah. God will fulfill the promise and give them a child called Isaac. Genesis 21 verse 1 and 2 says, now the Lord was gracious to Sarah, and he said, and the Lord, as he had said, and the Lord did for Sarah what he had promised. Isaac is born. In a turn of events, Sarah sees Ishmael mocking his son during the feast held for Isaac. And as we all know, Umam Sarah or Ugok Sarah will not let this pass by. So Sarah tells Abram to get rid of Hagar and Ishmael. So distressed, Abram rose early in the morning and took bread and a skin of water and gave to Hagar and sent her away. And she departed and wandered in the wilderness of Beersheba. Look around in the street corners of our neighborhood. Look around in many of our cities, our communities, and you will find thousands of young people, especially boys, roaming the streets, causing all sorts of problems. We also give them names and we call them the Nyaube boys. The rate of teenage pregnancy is alarming. Our prisons are crammed. Most of them are crying out for their daddies. The absent fathers contribute widely to this pandemic. Isn't it time that the women in their lives, the women in the lives of these fathers, remind them to take care of those Ishmaels who, for the reason not known to them, are suffering, while Abram and Sarah are having it all? In conclusion, may I quote again? The United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres, speaking to the Nelson Mandela Annual Lecture 2020, said, I quote, "Everywhere women are worse off than men simply because they are women. Inequality and discrimination are the norm. Violence against women, including femicide, is at epidemic levels," unquote. God is against all forms of violence and counts on us to fight the injustices of this world. Let us not be bystanders and watch. We have an obligation to protect those who are vulnerable. How do we treat those women who help maintain our homes and raise our children while we are at work? What does your daughter-in-law say about you? Is she overwhelmed by what you say or expect from her? I have heard people say it's better to have a man as a manager than a woman. Why? I personally prefer to be stopped by a male traffic officer than a woman. You go to the bank or any office, when a woman helps a white lady, she will be saying, "Yes, ma'am, how can I help you, ma'am? Thank you, ma'am," while you are waiting your turn. The same person will say, "Go to sir," while that person is answering a phone or chatting to a colleague. Young women in great positions these days are accused by older women of having bought the jobs by having sex with the employer without any proof. If that's what is happening, why not stop such practices? The list is endless. Ponder on your own experiences. What can you do better? Women need women to fight the inequality and injustices. Older or younger, regardless of how we define our life stages, we need one another. Paul in Titus 2, verse 1 to 3 says, "But as for you, speak things which are proper for sound doctrine. The older men be sober, reverent, temperate, sound in faith, in love, in patience. The older men likewise be reverent in behavior, not slanderers, not given to much wine, teachers of good things." That is what we are called for. An equal world is an enabled world. How will you help forge a gender equal world? The world needs you and me to stand up and fight this monster called gender-based violence. And together we can bring equality to the fallen world. Hashtag each for equal. God bless you. Amen.
Amen.